Okay, welcome everyone to the first meeting of CGO Fund 8. And I'll get into a screen share for the agenda. Okay, so yeah, George said he might pop along as well. And there's Tivo, Torsten. Okay, if we start as usual with Treasury, hi Andre and Miro, if you can give us some updates on Treasury as it relates to F7 and F8.
F7 as well.
Just briefly, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't prepare for F7, but for F8, there's $6,860 incoming with the next month. And we've already paid for all the meetings, and we paid $4,200 in US for Kenric's research. So we still have to pay Kenric $5,800 US, and then we need to decide what to do with that incoming. Yeah. Are we going to pay Kenric or are we going to pay something else? Yeah. Let me have a look quickly at Fund 7.
What else do we have payable?
Did you say, Andre, that all the meetings have been paid in advance?
All the meetings are paid.
Okay.
So what I see here is there's reports, retrospective surveys. Those are things we can still pay. And project management as well.
Yeah.
So the rest of the payments were the variable payments based on
deliverables
and deliverables, yeah?
That's right, yeah. So, I mean, last time, well, for funds, you're right, Andre, we shouldn't go on to Fund 7 too much detail. We have an item later on for that. But I think for Fund 7, after everything was paid, including project management costs, we decided to divide the remainder equally. But for F8, we could do something different. Phil, so we could that's up for discussion really, and whether Kenric you need we could pay you the rest of the research money, Kenric, but that's up to you as well. Allison.
Sorry for losing track. Did you say the Fund 8 meetings were paid, and if so, what was the date of that payment? I missed that.
Yes, I can tell you quickly. We paid on the 31st of May and the June 13th.
Got it, thank you.
And then after this coming payment, what's left to receive? Do we just have the closeout, like the amount after the closeout, or is there more payments that we're expecting?
No, there's more payments. Let me check quickly. I think there's 2 more.
So 2 more, fund iteration releases, 2 more fund releases.
Let me just double check that. No, I think it's only 1 more. So it's only
okay, 1 more.
Yeah. So it's just that 6,800.
Final amount, and then final release, which would be closed in September, I suppose.
It's only 1. There's only 1 left, eh? So we will have to write a closeout report to receive that one.
Okay. Kenric, how's would you prefer to be paid the remainder of research in when would it be? It would be August, I suppose, rather than September.
Well, I'm a practical man. Sooner payments are better than later payments, you know, but it's your decision. You're running it.
Well, it is not, yeah, it's kind of, you know, I mean, I can do that.
I mean,
and we can do that, I mean, rather. So,
yeah.
And then that just gets it out of the way and we can move on. I mean, the deliverables, you know, previously we've paid the deliverables retrospectively. But it's a new proposal, so we could decide to do that differently. But okay, should we just decide to pay for the remainder of research then for the next fund release?
But just to clarify, is the next fund release in August, or is it following the completion of the Fund 8 closeout report?
Just wait. I've looked at the Fund 7 proposal for some reason. I think there is more than one still incoming. Just want to find that.
I think so. Actually.
I think it should be August. That was.
Oh, so it will be August. Okay, yeah, it is.
Well,
Okay,
maybe
so
just clarify that after the meeting, because I think we have a lot to cover today.
Yeah. Okay. But provisionally, I'll put
yeah. So
pay the remainder of research for research.
There's 3 more allocations incoming.
Okay.
That makes no sense.
Okay, well, if we move on, yeah, right, because we've got a lot to cover. So, town hall slides, how does that go? I wasn't there, but I'm sure it went well. Allison.
Thanks. Yeah, so I went into a little more depth about our history and where we came from and what we're trying to do. I remembered to ask people to comment on parameters this time around, either in the chat or in Discord. I don't think anybody did either. But yeah, so I would say that's my only update. I'm curious for any feedback. Was anyone here?
It was helpful.
Oh no, Matthias, thank you. You gave me, you had sent me a nice note. Thank you, Kenric.
Justin.
Do we have a publicly accessible register of all the parameters which we have identified?
No.
No, yeah. Yeah. Do you think we should do that?
I think it would be helpful, yes.
Well, hold that thought, because someone would have to do that, you know, so
yeah, that's quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And it changes, but it's a good idea.
Yeah. TiVo or Phil, is it? Or both?
Yeah, I think we started off wondering what IOG was going to do with the fact that we are now recording and showing and looking to distribute those parameters. So I guess they've had forewarning now that that's happening, and it's kind of already happening on Town Hall. So I think we're good to start. I think that we were kind of waiting to do that distribution way back when, that we wanted to make sure that that was spoken about.
Well,
we're considered done now.
Yeah, we're kind of doing oversight of parameters, and I suppose that's what. But the question is how we are going to approach that. I mean, Allison's obviously you're doing a kind of an overview every Town Hall slide presentation, aren't you, Allison? So.
Yes, and that it's meant to only be the most recent changes that we've kind of informally observed. I agree that documenting, I mean, ideally documenting all parameters and logging when they change and how that decision is made and how it's communicated would be fantastic. But it's a huge work set. So
yeah,
let's talk about that.
Yeah, okay, I'll just do a quick I mean, I have just a quick view of the project board. It looks a bit frightening because there's a lot, a lot of in the backlog, but it's mostly to do with, there's a lot of F7 stuff in progress, which we'll talk about in a minute, well towards the end. You've done the town hall slides, and then today we're talking about scope, really. Some newsletter and some reporting, but mostly today's meeting is going to be a scoping meeting. And maybe I'll leave challenge, in case George turns up, if I leave challenge setting to last and then go straight into Catalyst Circle Oversight. I've changed the title of this from what it was called before. What it was called before was problem sensitive. So basically, I'm not assuming what we should oversee. Okay. So the scope is, I mean, I don't know who put that note in. Maybe it's Vanessa or
I put that there.
Okay, thanks, Kenric. And yeah, so I mean, I wasn't at the after town hall discussion, so over to you, everyone here, to decide how should we approach Circle Oversight. What should we do? What should we, you know, who would like to work on that as well?
Well, I can chime in because I led one of the discussions. And I think it was a very good discussion. There's a video recording of it, and I just finished detailed notes of the meeting that I've asked Stephen and Harris to review before I publish it. And then Joey had input to that, but he's on vacation right now. I think that, you know, people have different thoughts, but there was kind of consensus that it's important for some reasonable compensation to be consistent for the Circle members, that it is an important function. There is support for the Circle, and there is support for it being sustainable through appropriate compensation. I also have done some design work on this and outlined some possibilities. And in my notes, I've actually added another one that kind of came out of our discussions. I won't go into details of those now because it would take time, but my question is, I'm willing to put some more time into that. And there's a student from Oxford who's also quite interested in this problem. My concern is whether IOG would actually take it seriously, to have something more than a fixed salary, which I don't think will ever work. That's sort of my bottom line is.
What, for a fixed salary?
Yeah. You know, and you can watch the video and read the notes once I publish them. But my basic framework is, I think there's a big disparity between how community members are being recruited to fulfill functions within Catalyst and how either proposal teams are compensating people on their proposal teams, or even, you know, IOG in terms of how they run their business and how they recruit people to be employees of their business. And ultimately, I think that disparity has to be resolved in order for the community to be more healthy.
Okay.
So with the Circle role, I've proposed some ideas that would allow for a kind of negotiation where candidates could propose a salary, but then there'd also be a process that would make that, you know, be competitive. And
okay, if I could just bracket it there, because that's one aspect that we could focus on for oversight.
Exactly.
Circle. If I can pass it over now to Vanessa, are you here? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry I'm late, everybody. I had a bit of a laptop crash, which I had to fix before I could get in.
No worries. Right. So I'll hand over to you, the chair. Okay, so we're on Circle Oversight. Yeah.
Are you going to keep screen sharing?
I will, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so sorry, I'm just catching up. Are we moving on to dReps, onto Circle Oversight now, or
no? We're talking about what should be the scope of oversight, and Kenric talked about compensation, but there's still other possibilities.
Okay. Well, I can see Tivo's hand up. Any other thoughts on what the scope of this should be?
I was wondering with Kenric's point, was that discussed in the after town hall, or is this a proposal that you're cooking up? Okay.
It was discussed in the after town hall.
Okay, cool.
And I've also had some chats within the Circle Slack on the issue.
So are we saying then that part of CGO scope should be around Circle compensation? Is that so? Because I've missed the first bit, are we agreeing that?
Well, I think the broader point is that one of the primary functions of this current circle is to design the election process for a Circle 4.
Sure.
And so there were 3 after town hall discussions about that. And I led one of them. So I was just reviewing my part of it.
Okay, cool. Allison, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, for me personally, the parameter side of things is more interesting than the Circle Oversight side of things. So I'm happy to defer that scope to others. I would only suggest, given the point that I kind of hammered in the town hall, that we're not making decisions, that we're clear to separate what's oversight from, I know we all wear a lot of hats, but other work we're doing where we're proposing and working on solutions.
Yeah, that's a good point. And maybe that's a question, is whether, this issue came up. So I've sort of made some contributions to the discussion, but is that part of this oversight work, or is that something different?
I was thinking more, the report back here I would have given was that there was an after town hall that did go through. There were 3 of them. Of course, different discussions happened in different places. So there was obviously no ability to make a decision in those discussions. But I think we had participatory members from here, both acting as overseers and as participants. And I think that's kind of more the report we're looking for here, rather than any particular outcomes of what happened.
Can I just ask, because I missed a little bit at the beginning, surely here in this meeting, we should be talking about what we think CGO's approach and scope to Circle Oversight should be, rather than thrashing out what happened in the after town hall or what didn't happen. It feels to me like, these are all, interesting and important things that did happen, but can we try to focus on where that leaves us in terms of CGO?
I think what Phil meant was to say that we just say that this event happened and we have now timeline of people who want to see what's happening in this catalyst space. They have a timeline of, okay, events are here, here, and here, and some of them repeat, some of them don't, but you kind of get this scope of people working actively in places. And another thing I wanted to point out, which you also would, is that what we could do is, when Catalyst Circle is looking for feedback, like doing polls or these surveys, that as an oversight, we also leverage our Twitter and funnels to get information to that circle. So we don't have situations again where Circle is doing something, but he doesn't find the traction, or they get their own audience and use that as a reason that we should do this instead of trying to reach from different people. Even though we don't even also have big audience, but if this gonna grow, then at some point this is going to be valuable service.
I'm kind of putting my own hand up there in case anybody wanted to go ahead of me, but I see that point, but I do think that it's kind of moving away from oversight and more into kind of participating in the process. And personally, I feel really strongly that we should try to avoid doing that, and we should keep our oversight function really clear. I kind of think that one of the things that should be in our scope for Fund 8 is looking at the election process and what is decided about that, because that is what Circle has pretty much tasked itself to do, is to focus on the election for Circle V4. And that seems to be a natural focus.
When you say looking at, what do you mean?
Having oversight of, documenting, keeping a focus on it. Because, yeah, I think maybe what Tivo said is part of it, that sometimes Circle tries to communicate what is going on and people don't always hear it, but also we can contextualize to an extent.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and so I think that's good guidance. I guess there's a question, particularly in a process that is, it's the design of the election, of the upcoming election, that's kind of front and center right now. What does oversight mean? And, and what are the boundaries for contributing to that process? I don't know. There seems to me there's two functions. One function is, as you're saying, documenting what's going on. So that's quite important. But then oversight can also involve making recommendations, right? We're not ultimately the decision makers, but we should feel comfortable making recommendations.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess maybe there's a conversation here generally about, what oversight means. I don't know, but I'm just looking at the time, and I'm conscious that this is like quite early on in the things we've got to get through, and it's nearly past. I'm wondering, do we hope to come to a decision on what our scope is for this element, or do we plan to discuss it further in Discord?
Well, I think we can discuss it further in Discord. Like you're saying, we fleshed out some things with this issue. It's not all complete or resolved, but we probably should move on to other things too.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose also my feeling is that if you remember what happened in Fund 7 when we started off saying, well, there's nothing to talk about parameter changes, is there? So you never know what might come up, I suppose, and how things might shift. I mean, have you talked about dReps at all? Because what I'm looking at in the agenda is that pretty much it's in progress and it's all in hand, and there's not that much to talk about in terms of what the scope is. Would that be fair, Kenric? You've had 2 meetings already, right?
2 or 3, I think, at least 2. And we've had side meetings. I mean, I can give an update to the team if that's helpful.
Cool.
Yeah, just before that, I'll just say, Vanessa, because you were, we skipped challenge settings in case George arrives later. So we haven't covered challenge settings. We've just done oversight.
Okay, right. Okay, we are quite behind then.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So we need to cover challenge settings, and Kenric can maybe do it an update from dReps.
Yeah, I mean, a quick one, Kenric, if we've got...
I can keep it short.
Nice one.
Yeah, so we have the team has come together. We have 3 authors that are actively working on getting their drafts together. And then there's another author who was on travel. So we're resolving this week whether he's going to be a lead author. Thurston, who's joined us in this meeting, is working as a deputy to me, and Steve, myself, and Thurston are working together as editors of this paper.
Cool. Do you feel like there's anything further that you need in terms of defining scope or in terms of contribution from the rest of the group, or are you kind of running with it and it's all good?
Well, right now we're doing very well. We will be putting together a review team. So you all could be part of that if you want. But it's in, the intent is to have reviewers from the broader community. And I have set aside some of the funding to provide rewards for people who contribute to the review process.
Cool. Has anybody got any points they'd like to raise or any questions on dReps and scope thereof? Okay, nice one. Shall we? I think there's quite a lot of interest in the scope of governance parameters. So shall we take that first and then maybe George shows up at the last minute or something? Does that sound all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And Vanessa, just to catch you up, I don't know if you were there. You were there last night. I'd called for people to contribute to our governance parameters conversation. I don't think anyone took me up on that. Somebody asked both last night, and then I think Torsten asked just now, are we keeping a comprehensive log somewhere of catalyst parameters, which we are not. I think that would be a really useful activity to log all of the parameters, how they change, who makes the decision, how it's communicated. And I'm conscious that that's a pretty large workload.
I very much agree that would be a good thing. I mean, we can take a little bit out of the Fund 7 report where there was a kind of list of the ones that we said we'd noticed. We could use that as a basis, but there is research to do on when things were announced and how they were announced. Maybe is that on the GitHub board, Stephen, do you think? Could we make that a problem on the board? You're muted, sorry.
Or just ignoring us.
Oh, he said in the chat, cool, okay.
Sorry, sorry, no, I was muted. So George has just joined us. Yeah, sorry, I thought I was speaking, but I was muted. So
right. Hi, George. Cool, yeah. Excellent.
What do you mean tracking each parameter on a GitHub board? Is that what you're thinking?
I wouldn't say each separate parameter, but I would just say maybe having a problem on the board which says all the parameters, and every time we spot one, we put it up there and try to note when it was introduced and how it was introduced and by whom, to whom, that kind of stuff. Yeah, Allison, is there anything else that we should cover?
No, I think that's it. I mean, it would be a huge list of every catalyst parameter, but this is what I said last night. I'll repeat it. We can't even think about how the community is going to take over the governance of Catalyst unless we understand what are all of the things that need to be decided. Yeah.
Either Tiva or
I think maybe the way to go about that is to chunk it in a sense. So, can you define sort of the broad categories of parameters? So for instance, there's parameters on the proposal processes, there's parameters on the proposal review processes, try to chunk it. I see
the point of chunking it, but I do think that maybe people won't think about what category it falls into when they raise it and go, oh, I've spotted a parameter. So if we want to engage the community in doing this and maybe we can try and make it public in some way. Tivo or Phil, I can see your hand is up. I'm not sure who it is who's speaking.
Mike. Hello, can you hear us?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Tivo and I were discussing something yesterday that probably relates to that in decision making, with Jeremy, was it? Yeah. Jeremy's done great work on the decision making tree, and basically some of those parameters could be categorized within that tree, whether they're, what are the two categories? Like
So the first question is like, is the decision urgent? So should we change parameter, yes or no, right now? And then based on no or yes answers, you kind of skip like some governance models or decision-making symptoms.
Basically, we can look to categorize parameters. I mean, we don't need to do it all and all the time, but some parameters are going to need, like, they're not that important. They can be looked at years down the line. Some parameters probably should be discussed urgently and worked out how to change them. And other parameters are, you know, on the scale of importance.
Yeah, I mean, just jumping in a little bit ahead of Torsten, that did come up in Fund 7, didn't it? This idea of categorizing what kinds of parameters the community can even have a say in.
And the most important thing, I think, with all of this is that there's a column there that says, and it's blank for now, but it says, these are the conditions on which the community can take this over, right? And those, they'll be blank for now. But as we get to more important parameters, or if we start with one really important parameter and we say, okay, community and IOG and other interested people, we need to discuss what it is that will let this parameter turn from a stewarded parameter towards an executable decision made by the greater community. So I think that's where the work that we can do has significant actual value in the community, that beyond just reporting, but actually reporting and engaging on how to get those parameters functioning as adjustable.
Agreed. Yeah. Matthias.
Yeah, I think we have decided that we want to build this public register. Maybe we can discuss on Discord further how we want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice one. Kenric.
And I was going to say, I think in addition to the parameters themselves, what's actually critical is how those parameters are currently being managed and what's the cost of that management. And because I think that in terms of transitioning responsibility to the community, that's what becomes critical, is how much, what's involved in, you know, choosing to make decisions on these parameters, choosing to make updates, and how much is that going to cost, and how are you going to manage the funds for those costs.
That's really interesting. I mean, this is just my ignorance talking here, but how do we find that out? Is that basically something we have to go and ask IOG in most cases, do you think?
I don't know that IOG would make a clear disclosure, but what you could start with is identifying who's involved in the decision making, and then some approximation of how much time they spend on that particular issue, and some approximation of how much that costs.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Has anybody else got any sort of immediate thoughts on what else could be added to this process, or are we just now agreeing that, yeah, we want to keep some sort of register of parameter changes and we'll discuss it async, what the details are, where it's held, and I guess who is invited to contribute as well? Torsten, sorry.
Yeah, I think some of the parameter changes in itself were coming without explanation. They felt a little bit voluntarily. And the question is whether that is something which we should report back to the community also.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember a number of things where a statement was given even in a town hall, and then time goes by, and by a sudden that statement is changed, but it's not really clear why. Yeah, there might be a good reason for that one, but as it is not transparent, it becomes then actually a challenge also for the community to learn from that.
Definitely. I mean, just backtracking a little to what came out of Fund 7. We did, when we met with Harris, we talked about the idea of maybe whether the CGO needs to take some sort of role in disseminating any of that information. Do we think that should be in scope for our Fund 8 project, to kind of look at where a parameter change is coming from and maybe share information on the research background to it, the reasons for it, blah, blah, blah? Stephen, your hand's up.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a good start for scope of governance parameters. I mean, how much we give to one subject, you know, we don't have to, they don't all have to be equal. We could do more work on one subject than another. There does seem to be some sort of coalescing to Torsten's idea of building a public register. I'm sort of picking up on what Torsten's saying about thinking about what information we would like to collect there, Torsten, like kind of like, where do these things come from? You know, who requested them? And also how they're categorized as well as someone else.
And I think also from what people have said, there's something there about how they are first introduced to the community. Like, are they just announced in a town hall, or is there any lead up, or who is told, and that kind of thing? Torsten, is your hand up?
Yep.
Still up, or?
Yeah, no, I just raised it again. I mean,
cool.
The one which strikes my mind at the moment is kind of the initial introduction of dReps and how that now kind of is wrapped up in the workshops. Yeah. The story is quite different. Yeah. And there might be a good rationale for that, why it changed, but it would be important to understand. Obviously, someone kind of said what we initially said cannot be done. Now we have to do it differently.
Yeah.
And the challenge which comes out of that one is that this process is totally opaque. It's not really clear why this has changed. Yeah. So people were kind of going perhaps into something and were not really clear what they were walking into. And now the story has totally changed.
Yeah, very much so. It feels like quite a lot of that information, again, is something we'd have to go to IOG and ask about.
And perhaps that's kind of also the point there, kind of if their decision-making process on their side is not, I mean, I would like to understand how they kind of come to these decisions on their side at the moment, even if they say, well, we don't have a process, we just make it up. Fair enough, at least you know then how it works, yeah? Because you have to kind of, as soon as you give it to the community, bring in mechanisms to derive these decisions in a similar way. Well, otherwise, I'm not saying do it arbitrary, but what I'm trying to say is, if we want to take it over, we have to also understand the way they are doing it right now, or how we could improve on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I seem to be backtracking a lot to Fund 7, but it's just because I've just written the report bit about parameter changes, and in that meeting that we had with Harris, he did say that he was up for trying to share their decision-making process and their document. So maybe that's something that carries over and that we try to pursue in Fund 8. I don't know. Do we think we have enough kind of broad agreement on this than we can discuss at async, or is there any more issues that people would like to raise, or any kind of more fining down that anyone wants to do on this?
I guess just making note that we want to follow up with Harris. We're doing it now. Okay, cool.
Yeah, is there? Yeah, good point. I think there's a couple of things actually in that meeting that we could do with following up with, but anyway, yeah, let's take that to Discord. And I guess now we can go to challenge settings. George has said in the chat that he can't actually speak much because he's not in a place where he can speak. Yeah, comment in the chat from George. It feels we can easily be more precise about parameters around dReps. Yeah, probably so. So, yeah, I'm just trying to find...
I also wonder about, and I mentioned this in the after town hall about circle reps as well, that there's parameters to do with circle reps that we also kind of need to be understood and fleshed out in order to make better decision making. So I think a lot of what we're doing generally as the community governance oversight is looking and exploring what parameters are, how they're changed, and trying to identify places that they do exist but aren't currently understood to be existing.
Yeah, really good point. I think there are a lot of things that are like that. I think it's also maybe worth saying that I'm seeing kind of overlap that isn't actually overlap. Say, for instance, Kenric is working on the theory behind dReps, but stuff about the actual parameter changes to do with dReps belongs in parameter changes. People are looking at Circle Oversight, but parameter changes to do with Circle Reps kind of belongs in parameter changes. I don't know if anybody else is getting this, but I'm getting a feeling that parameter changes is kind of almost like an overarching thing. It's the biggest thing, and other, there are maybe like little things that are separated out, but all of the work of CGO could actually become parameter changes by the look of it. Am I going too far?
Can we move on to challenge settings now, though?
Yeah, we can. Go on then.
I was just going to say the parameters are the elephant in the room, I think. And,
yes.
And focusing on it is a worthwhile thing to do. Let's go challenges.
Okay, so what have we actually got about challenge settings? Just looking back. Okay, so George has said, I'm presenting categories and contributor recurring model to IOG on the 22nd of July, which is soon. Will be recorded and we'll share in the Discord. I guess that should probably be documented on some level. George, are you planning to do like any timestamps, or do you want someone else to do that? Okay, well, it might, yeah. I mean, I'll have a look and see if I can do that, because I think it would be good to kind of publish that. But George always says also says in the chat, I'm pushing contributors as a recurring model. There's a lot of parameters in contributor model that would need thought. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I suppose what I'm wondering is, it feels to me, maybe this is because I don't know enough, but it feels like the whole issue of the scope of challenge settings is kind of different from Catalyst contributors. And I'm not quite seeing how CGO has a take on Catalyst contributors. What am I missing? It's because funding categories are looking to replace challenge settings. Yeah, sure. But I'm not quite seeing, and contributors is a big part of that.
Yeah, okay. I'm a little lost too. I understand the funding categories, but I'm not sure how contributors fits into that.
I think it's maybe something to do with the way of working and the way that Kenric, you've got your hand up. Go for it.
Yeah, maybe there's two things. I do feel like there's been discussions that kind of came out of the work that Nadia and Tommy have been doing together, but honestly, I still feel confused by what they're suggesting. And then I was going to make a second comment, was that I learned this past week and was kind of surprised by this, that the challenge team members have not been given authority to do auditing of the proposals that they're overseeing. And I wondered if anyone had some clarity. If it's off topic for this part of it, I'm willing to defer it, but I think that's a pretty serious concern. Like, if there's not, if the challenge teams have been specifically asked not to audit the projects, who is auditing the projects?
Well, I can speak to that really briefly. Challenge teams were never intended as an auditing function. So we haven't been asked to audit because that's not what we're supposed to be there to do.
Right, but why?
I guess the other issue, you say, who is at nobody? I keep saying that in my view, there is no auditing in Catalyst. It doesn't happen. So But the reason why I think possibly was because it's quite a heavy responsibility, and the compensation they could offer to challenge teams wasn't enough to take that on.
Yeah.
Possibly. I don't know. That's my take. Phil, have you got a take on that maybe? Because I know you've been involved in challenge teams a lot as well.
Yeah. My understanding was that it was never meant to be doing an auditing function. And I know people have been mentioning that maybe they should be that, but it would be a complete different skill set required, I think, to run an auditing. And look, there's already talk of like the promotion of CT being a different function to being the administration part of the CT team. So we could expand the CT teams to include an auditing function and look to bring in auditors, but that's outside of their scope at this point. And I was hoping that Ron and others would start looking to put auditing type proposals through the Catalyst so that we could actually work out a methodology to start this process, but that never really seemed to happen. So yeah, but I don't see it as being a CT function, but I guess that's my opinion of the.
Well, here's another question that's sort of related to this is when I look through the current challenges, what I observe is that every challenge has at least 3, maybe as many as 5 IOG employees who are part of the challenge team. And then maybe 1 or at the most 2 that are non-IOG employees. So I guess I also have a concern that even in this is another case where there's this like a baby step towards some delegation to the community, but there was never a commitment of a substantial budget so that you could recruit the right kind of people and they would have the adequate amount of time to do the functions that would truly be leadership of that challenge.
I mean, I sort of feel that maybe some of the stuff around challenge teams and audit, maybe it could go towards Audit Circle if that is going to continue to meet. I don't know how, do people feel that it's relevant to the scope of what CGO does on challenge settings or not?
I mean, I don't know what Audit Circle status is. It does seem to me that we're drifting a bit into the Audit Circle territory here.
An Audit Circle wasn't funded, and it needs someone to lead it. So I don't think there's no proposal scope for that, Allison. So all that we can do within CGO is within anything that can fit within the scope of challenge setting. So it returns us back to the question of challenge setting is looking at audit issues relevant to challenge setting, I suppose, is the question maybe.
I mean, there's something I wanted to raise just on the issue of our scope in relation to challenge setting. This particular fund has been quite unusual in terms of the challenge settings and the challenges that have been available to propose in. I would quite like to see CGO do some kind of oversight or information gathering on what effect that has had on Circle. I don't know, sorry, on Catalyst, not on Circle. I don't quite know what that would look like or what our process would be, but does anybody think that would be useful or valid?
That sounds amazing, but it also sounds like it would take up all our it's a whole nother thing, I think, to understand that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. We've got a lot of fantastic ideas and good work here. I think we're not lacking in things we could do. It's a question of prioritizing which ones we have the resources to do.
There should be a fund 8 or what is fund 9 right now. But did we get fund 8 this feedback how people thought how fair is the system or that has never been there, or is it only about voting?
It's about voting, but it contains things about the challenges, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or we could push that towards adding that to the survey maybe. that could be an easy solution that we could add that, try to get that added to the Fund 9 survey, because we still have time to get that done.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Kenric.
As we sort of get to the end of this section 4, one thing that's coming to mind is, have we decided as a team, like who's working on which of these things? You have challenge setting, circle oversight, dReps, and governance parameters. Now, I know each of us kind of worked on some of those things for Fund 7, so there might be a natural transition to continuing, but maybe that's either in this meeting or the next meeting, something that has to be clarified.
I think that's quite a good point, that maybe we could do that quickly before we move on. That I think we are kind of making assumptions that say that obviously, Kenric, you're going to keep working on dReps, but
yeah, I mean, that's for sure. And that Thurston is working on that with me.
Yeah.
But, you know, do we want to clarify that on the other topics?
I mean, why not? Stephen, have you got?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of follow on from Kenric. Maybe we should go through, because we're coming towards the end of the meeting, is to go for each one and just see who would like to participate in that subject.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that we do that quickly, but we don't see it as definitive for maybe a meeting or two, because people might find that something grabs their attention, or they've got a particular skill that helps them to get involved with something that they didn't think they were going to. Well, let's say then challenge settings. I'm assuming George. Anybody else who's at the moment particularly interested in that?
I'm interested to participate in that side. But we'll work out how this looks over time, I think.
Yeah. Anyone else on challenge settings? Okay, we'll circle oversight then. In the chat, Matthias says, can't answer that quickly. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Does anybody have a particular focus on circle oversight that they would like to pursue?
Yeah, I like to see how this things evolves and where we put them.
Cool.
I think as a secondary thing, I will participate in this with regard to just following through on this issue about the planning for Circle 4, and particularly how they're compensated.
Yeah. And I can certainly feed into it to an extent with the oversight of Circle that I do anyway as part of the funded proposal oversight of Catalyst Circle. So they are kind of different approaches, but I can feed in if needed. So dReps we've already said, I think, have we? Was there anybody else who is interested to jump in on that? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's Thurston, Steve, and I working directly on it as editors of this white paper. And then, as I said, in the coming weeks, we'll be opening it up for reviewers. So if others want to participate, they can.
So I'm assuming then that that parameter changes is what everybody else is interested in. It certainly is me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm interested in parameter changes.
Yeah.
Sorry, about the dRep, is that the only part of the dRep that we're going to be looking at? Or I guess it's okay.
No, I think it's what we were saying, isn't it? That particular research corner of it is Kenric and Torsten and Stephen. But where dReps, where it's about parameter changes about dReps, it kind of fits in parameter changes in a way.
I would be happy to work on that one.
Oh, go ahead.
I would be happy to work on that specific topic in conjunction with dReps for something that links it up to each other.
Nice one.
Regarding dReps, I'm doing some voting already, like putting comments and thinking, should I vote yes or no? And I'm putting that on my report. I'm not sure it's not really like changing systems, like it actually going through that already in the current fund, because I'm not sure, are we doing that or anybody doing? So I thought maybe I just do a like 10-minute video, share my one challenge setting where I voted on everything and give like opinion why, and see if that's how it's supposed to be for some, and how could I improve, and maybe that feedback already from there could be used in the oversight to see that what people think when people vote, do their own ballots and share their no votes and yes votes. And
oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
But it goes totally different of what Kenric is doing.
Well, and I will say that you might even want to separate out the white paper from oversight of dReps, because the paper is not focused on sort of the current oversight. It's rather focused on A, the design issues around dReps, and B, what measurements would be needed to monitor the dReps over a longer period of time. But there is probably a second function that I'm not really focused on, which is sort of just oversight of how the process is going. So for instance, I think we're all sort of aware that there was an expectation that there's going to be another workshop in July, but we're now at mid-July and that hasn't been formally announced and put in the calendar. So that's like, I think people are kind of surprised by that right now.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. I think there are, and Phil, you were hinting at it as well, that there are other elements of looking at dReps other than just the white paper. Is it Tivo or Phil who's got a hand raised there?
Yeah, and I think as it's a developing space, parts that need oversighting might appear as time goes on. So what I'm wondering is that Tevo is particularly interested as being a participating dRep and exploring how he might do that. So that's kind of, that might be the part that he can, that we can focus on unless something else comes up that makes sense to also check out. And I just need to make note, Tevo and I need to head to the airport pretty soon. So we need to wrap up fairly quickly.
I mean, what I'm going to suggest is that we've kind of got quite a lot of detail there, so maybe we can just whiz through the last couple of things. But Stephen, you've got a point there to make.
Yeah, I think on the dReps, I just want to say that, you know, that Tivo's point about having a perception, a dRep, a participating dRep perspective would be really useful from an oversight perspective. But in general, more like the updates we do of the slides, for example, chasing Jack for his July workshop that he's supposed to be doing the end of this month. So that's the sort of thing maybe we should do as a kind of like what might be called community governance oversight, sort of housekeeping.
Yeah, and I did make that point. And oh, you know that, Stephen, but I did make that point.
Sure. And so it's something we should, it's another thing that we do, I suppose, that we should probably keep an eye on what our IG are saying, and if they're doing it on the times they're supposed to be doing it on, that kind of thing, and then following it up from there.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably, I mean, you're in touch with Jack, maybe bob him an email and find out.
I was going to email him then. So we start wrapping up then the agenda?
I mean, Torsten, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, just a quick one. I mean, it's probably just an observation from my side, but in this workshop, there were some statements made which are affecting effectively groups outside of the dReps in itself.
Right.
And that might be a parameter change the wider community might have to be aware of. So for example, I remember that there was a statement you have to have at least voted for 30 proposals to be eligible to get effectively this voter payout. And these are things which kind of are a little bit under the carpet. I mean, aside of the fact that it's still not clear when dReps actually would get into gear. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Still Fund 9, or is it 10, or is it even 11?
It is 10. Apparently, at the moment, it's 10. But yeah, you're absolutely right that these are things that CGO should keep an eye on. Okay, I'm going to whiz through the last points on the agenda. Proposal reporting, Fund 7 and Fund 8. Stephen, I think you've been doing Fund 7 and it's just at the stage now of the final report. Is there anything you need to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, those 2 points, I'll just say I'm going to do those 2. So for Fund 7 and Fund 8, so it's just there as a kind of, just to record that they're being done. So if you want to move on to the next item.
So you're happy to continue reporting on the Fund 8 proposal, yeah?
Unless you want to take it over.
Not at all.
Okay.
Nice one. Okay, point number 6 is a summary of this meeting for the Catalyst Weekly newsletter. I think this is just to flag up that it needs done. And if anyone's got any thoughts, please stick it in either the GitHub issue or just directly into Discord, and we'll put something together for Friday. And then the last main point on the agenda is final report and slide presentation. I think is kind of covered already because we know about it.
That's in progress. I've been doing some other work, but I will be doing the final edits on that. The slides are being drafted. We should have a script by the beginning of next week. Me and Allison have agreed to narrate it. We could either do that separately or together and then go on to town hall. So that's all that's needed. So, yeah.
Nice one. So you're aiming to present it as a town hall presentation, yeah?
Yeah. Well, yeah, as people have normally done, like submit a recording to town hall and then for some of us to speak to that.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, nice one. So yeah, at the end of the agenda, there's this issue that Kenric raised, and I stuck it on the end of the agenda because I kind of thought we would run out of time, but could we agree that maybe it's something we want to look at in the next meeting, this issue of a discussion about the executive, legislative and judicial features of governance? Does that sound like something that would be a good starting point for the next meeting?
Yeah, that's one possibility. Or sometimes Steve has done like after meeting informal discussions, and this could really just be informal. It doesn't,
okay,
it's not like, I don't think it's a critical part of our agenda, but it's some interesting food for thought that I was interested in hearing other people's comments on.
Okay, well, I can see that quite a lot of people have got to hop off now. So, I mean, we can keep the meeting open and have an informal discussion and switch the recording off. But if not many people stay, maybe it's something we should talk about after another meeting instead. But Tivo and Phil, both.
Yeah, I was going to say some other meetings would be better for us. And
make all the decisions you need.
No, we're going to commit you two to doing everything about it.
Okay, fantastic.
You said you wanted to write up all the reporting, right, for that proposal.
Tero did, yeah.
So you're off to Italy then, Tivo and Phil. Yeah.
Wow, that's exciting. I'm George. Yeah.
George, are you going too?
Yeah, we're going to argue with George about categories.
And George, yeah. I probably should stop the recording, shouldn't I?
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.